Hi, I'm Sachin Chaudhary. Today we are going to start the stream on public policy response. In today's session, we are planning to cover significance of studying public policy, historical background or growth of public policy approach, what is public policy, and the policy problem, how policy problems are identified and come on policy agenda. Why comprehending the policy process is significant? Why should we study public policy? Because it has influence on our daily existence. One or the other policy of the government like education, health, law and order or environment is always affecting us. So our comprehension of the policy process would enable us to articulate our interests and influence the policy process depending on our role. For policymakers, for example, we have come far from traditional public administration to new public governance to new public service. Policymakers need to use the governance networks effectively, as the market and civil society are now collaborators. Policymakers need to be aware of the new dynamism in the policy environment. Citizens were passive recipients earlier, but now they aspire for more from their governments and their expectations have risen. Additionally, methods of getting policy inputs have also undergone sea change. There is greater availability of data and researches. For other stakeholders like civil society organizations or think tanks, methods of influencing the policy process have changed drastically. Interest articulation has gained sophistication. They can inform in a much better way. For students who want to make a career as policy analyst, understanding of the policy process and tools of policy analysis would help them in providing policy inputs and the feedback through independent researches and evaluation studies. For common citizens, through a good understanding of the policy process, they can organize themselves better and put pressure on the policy apparatus. Historically, the study of public policy is not very old. Rulers were seeking advice for problems earlier too, but the advice was rarely based on extensive research. Harold Laswell is credited with emphasizing the need for scientific approach to the study of problems and policy making. His book, he wrote a book, Politics, Who Gets What, When and How. It was published in 1936. Yeskel Dror refers to this book and says in public policy, how is more important than who, what and when. Laswell in this book had talked about skills in bargaining which gained people eminence as modern industry expanded during the 19th and 20th century. The term bargaining gives a hint that there were competing claims and those who bargained successfully got favorable policy response. In his later writings, he looked at policy making as problem solving and suggested that the scientific approach in problem solving would reduce the need for unproductive political debates. After that, Yeskel Dror is considered as primary contributor to the policy analysis. His book on public policy making, published in 1968, analyzed and evaluated the contemporary policy making with the purpose of improving it. Many more scholars paid their attention to the policy analysis, and this led to the phase of public policy approach in public administration. Of late, scholars of policy sciences are distinguishing themselves from the public administration theorists on the ground that policy sciences are explicitly problem oriented, addressing public policy problems and recommending relief. Many public policy schools have also come up all over the world. In last few years, some universities in India also have started postgraduate programs in public policy. Coming to the definition of public policy, there are several definitions. One of them which is very explanatory is by Thomas R. Dye. Anything that the government chooses to do or not to do. While you will find many problems for which policy decisions have been taken, let us take an example where the government has chosen not to do anything. National Drug Dependent Treatment Center, AIIMS, New Delhi, released a report of a survey in February 2019 that Punjab was one of the worst affected states in alcohol consumption and that 1 in 37 people affected by alcohol use disorders did not receive any treatment. 150 patients from Punjab diagnosed with alcohol-induced pancreatitis come to PGI alone. Instead of restricting, the Punjab government was trying online home delivery model for supplying liquor in February this year, which has attracted a lot of criticism. Are all decisions of the government policy decisions? Let us take the example of cyclone Amphan that struck West Bengal and Odisha on May 20th, 2020. Lots of people were evacuated. transport arrangements were made, shelters had been established, healthcare facilities were ramped up, agencies like NDRF, Coast Guard were present to service, post disaster relief were managed. All of this necessitated taking a lot of decisions by the government. These cannot be categorized as policy decisions. All such decisions were taken in accordance with the provision of National Disaster Management Act. This act is a policy instrument which deals with all such natural disasters. Let us see, when does the state intervene? Primarily, it depends on the role of the state. Post World War II periods saw governments increasing their areas of activities. In many countries, the state became omnipresent, especially in developing countries like India. At the same time, nature of the state was also a factor in determining the extent of expansion of activities of the state. However, since late 1970s, especially in market and mixed economies, when public administration was not found to be effective, financial resources were becoming scarce and literature on rent seeking appeared. People started questioning the expanded role of the government. Consequently, movement towards new public management and subsequently towards government to governance became significant. Oft repeated statement was, government has no business to be in business. In India too, which started the process of liberalization in mid 1990s, the clamor for role of private sector increased due to inefficiencies in the government sector. As mentioned earlier, now the governance is through network of alliances, and accordingly policy process has also undergone change. One IMF paper has identified some factors which determine the scope of activities of the government: social attitudes, level of economic development, degree of openness of the economy, technological developments, and quality of public administration. So, in this background, we see how policy problems are identified. While there are many, one useful categorization is in terms of failures. First failure is market failure. We all have seen the financial crisis in 2008 and recently NBFC's crisis in India. There are many such instances when governments had to intervene, the markets could not produce efficiently due to externalities. Sometimes government actions have also caused market failure. For example, when Jio was launched, it was accused of predatory pricing by Airtel and Vodafone. However, the TRAI said that as a new entrant, they are not in a position to violate the market dominance clause of rules, and Jio caused disruption and today commands the market, while other competitors are fighting for their survival. Government also intervenes when there are social failures. For example, there are issues like crime against women, alcoholism, child abuse, and so on. The third failure is the governance failure. I'll give you one example. TPDS aimed at providing subsidized food grains to the target beneficiaries, but it was plagued by the problems of warehousing problems, ghost ration cards, inclusion exclusion problems, diversion of the food grains, etc. So, these are the conditions when the state intervenes through the policy instruments. Now, that we have seen how the problems are identified, but which are the public policy problems? Agenda setting is a process by which problems and alternative solutions gain or lose public and elite attention. Often groups try to keep issues off the agenda. Scholars say that such blocking action is as important as the affirmative act of attempting to gain attention. Again, problems enter the policy agenda through public arena and bureaucratic arena. In public arena, the problems are raised by civil society groups, through protests, by interest groups. Sometimes there are issues which are recognized by the policy apparatus itself, and there are consultations, and subsequently the issues are picked up for the addressing of that challenge. Thank you.